Overtones, a one-act play by Alice Gerstenberg, 1913. Characters: Harriet, a cultured woman; Hetty, her primitive self; Margaret, a cultured woman; and Maggie, her primitive self. Time: the present. Scene: Harriet's fashionable living room. The door at the back leads to the hall. In the center, a tea table with a high-backed chair at each side. When the curtain rises, Harriet is seated right of tea table, busying herself with the tea things.
Harriet, my other self, my trained self.
Yes?
I want to talk to you.
Well?
Oh, Harriet, you are beautiful today.
Am I presentable, Hetty?
Suits me.
I've tried to make the best of the good points.
My passions are deeper than yours. I can't keep on the mask as you do. I'm crude and real. You are my appearance in the world.
I am what you wish the world to believe you are.
You are the part of me that has been trained.
I am your educated self.
I am the rushing river. You are the ice over the current.
I am your subtle overtones.
But together we are one woman, the wife of Charles Goodrich.
There I disagree with you, Hetty. I alone am his wife.
Harriet, how can you say such a thing?
Certainly. I am the one who flatters him. I have to be the one who talks to him. If I gave you a chance, you would tell him at once that you dislike him.
I don't love him, that's certain.
You leave all the fibbing to me. He doesn't suspect that my calm, suave manner hides your hatred. Considering the amount of scheming it causes me, it can safely be said that he is my husband.
Oh, if you love him.
I haven't any feelings. It isn't my business to love anybody.
Then why need you object to calling him my husband?
I resent your appropriation of a man who is managed only through the cleverness of my artifice.
You may be clever enough to deceive him, Harriet, but I am still the one who suffers. I can't forget that he is my husband. I can't forget that I might have married John Caldwell.
How foolish of you to remember John, just because we met his wife by chance.
That's what I wanted to talk to you about. She may be here at any moment. I want to advise you about what to say to her this afternoon.
By all means, tell me now, and don't interrupt while she's here. You have a most annoying habit of talking to me when people are present. Sometimes it is all I can do to keep my poise and appear not to be listening to you.
Impress her.
Hetty, dear, is it not my custom to impress people?
I hate her.
I can't let her see that.
I hate her because she married John.
Only after you refused him.
Was it my fault that I refused him?
That's right. Blame me.
It was your fault. You told me he was too poor and would never be able to do anything in painting. Huh, look at him now, known in Europe, just returned from 8 years in Paris, famous.
It was too poor a gamble at the time. It was much safer to accept Charles' money and position.
And then John married Margaret within the year.
Out of spite.
Freckled, gawky-looking thing she was, too.
Europe improved her. She was stunning the other morning.
Make her jealous today.
Shall I be haughty, or cordial, or caustic, or...
Above all else, you must let her know that we are rich.
Oh, yes, I do that quite easily now.
You must put on a bit.
Never fear.
Tell her I love my husband.
My husband.
Are you going to quarrel with me?
No, I have no desire to quarrel with you. It is quite too uncomfortable. I couldn't get away from you if I tried.
You're a stupid fool to make me refuse John. I'll never forgive you. Never.
Don't get me all excited. I'll be in no condition to meet her properly this afternoon.
I could choke you for robbing me of John.
Don't muss me.
You don't know how you have made me suffer.
It is not my business to have heartaches.
You're bloodless, nothing but a sham. Sham. Well,
Be quiet. I can't let her see that I've been fighting with my inner self.
And now, after all my suffering, you say it has cost you more than it has cost me to be married to Charles. But it is the pain here in my heart I've paid the price. I've paid for Charles being my husband.
He is.
He isn't.
He is.
He isn't. I'll kill you.
Don't. You're stronger than
Say he's mine.
He's ours.
A telephone rings.
There she is now.
Hetty hurries to the phone, but Harriet regains her supremacy.
Wait. I can't let the telephone girl down there hear my real self. It isn't proper. Show Mrs. Caldwell up.
I'm so excited. My heart is in my mouth.
A nice state you've put my nerves into.
Don't let her see you're nervous.
Quick, put the veil on, or she'll see you shining through me.
Harriet takes a scarf of chiffon that has been lying over the back of a chair and drapes it on Hetty, covering her face. The chiffon is the same color of their gowns, but paler in shade, so that it pales Hetty's darker gown to match Harriet's lighter one. As Hetty moves in the following scene, the chiffon falls away, revealing now and then the gown of deeper dye underneath.
Tell her Charles is rich and fascinating. Boast of our friends. Make her feel she needs us.
I'll make her ask John to paint us.
That's just my thought. If John paints our portrait,
we can wear an exquisite gown.
And make him fall in love again.
Yes.
Margaret parts the portiere's back center and extends her hand. Margaret is followed by her counterpart, Maggie.
Oh, Margaret, I'm so glad to see you.
That's a lie.
It's enchanting to see you, Harriet.
I'd bite you if I dared.
Wasn't our meeting a stroke of luck?
I've thought of you so often, Harriet, and to come back and find you living in New York.
Mr. Goodrich has many interests here.
Flatter her.
I know Mr. Goodrich is so successful.
Tell her we're rich.
Won't you sit down?
What a beautiful cabinet.
Do you like it? I'm afraid Charles paid an extravagant price.
I don't believe it.
I'm sure he must have.
How well you are looking, Margaret.
Yes, you are not. There are circles under your eyes.
I haven't eaten since breakfast and I'm hungry.
How well you are looking too.
You have hard lines about your lips. Are you happy?
Don't let her know that I'm unhappy.
Why shouldn't I look well? My life is full, happy, complete.
I wonder.
Tell her we have an automobile.
My life is complete too.
My heart is torn with sorrow. My husband cannot make a living. He will kill himself if he does not get an order for a painting.
You must come and see us in our studio. John has been doing some excellent portraits. He cannot begin to fill his orders.
Tell her we have an automobile.
Do you take lemon in your tea?
Take cream. It's more filling.
No cream, if you please. How cozy.
Only cakes? I could eat them all.
How many lumps?
Sugar is nourishing.
3, please. I used to drink my sweet coffee in Turkey, and ever since I
don't believe you were ever in Turkey.
I wasn't, but it's none of your business.
Have you been in Turkey? Do tell me about it.
Change the subject.
You must go there. You have so much taste in dress. You would enjoy seeing their costumes.
Isn't she going to pass the cake?
John painted several portraits there.
Why don't you stop her bragging and tell her we have an automobile?
Cake?
At last.
Thank you.
Automobile.
Follow up the costumes with the suggestion that she would make a good model for John. It isn't too early to begin getting what you came for.
What delicious cake.
There's your chance for the auto.
Yes, it is good cake, isn't it? There are always a great many people buying it at Harper's. I sat in my automobile 15 minutes this morning waiting for my chauffeur to get it.
Make her order a portrait.
If you stopped at Harper's, you must have noticed the new gowns at Henderson's. Aren't the shop windows alluring these days?
Even my chauffeur notices them.
I know you have an automobile. I heard you the first time.
I notice gowns now with an artist's eye, as John does. The one you have on, my dear, is very paintable.
Don't let her see you're anxious to be painted.
Oh, it's just a little model.
Don't seem anxious to get the order.
Perhaps it isn't the gown itself, but the way you wear it that pleases the eye. Some people can wear anything with grace.
Yes, I'm very graceful.
You flatter me, my dear.
On the contrary, Harriet, I have an intense admiration for you. I remember how beautiful you were as a girl. In fact, I was quite jealous when John was paying you so much attention.
She is gloating because I lost him.
Those were childhood days in a country town.
She's trying to make you feel that John was only a country boy.
Mass great men have come from the country. There is a fair chance that John will be added to the list.
I know it, and I am bitterly jealous of you.
Undoubtedly, he owes much of his success to you, Margaret. Your experience in economy and your ability to endure hardship. Those first few years in Paris must have been a struggle.
She is sneering at your poverty.
Yes, we did find life difficult at first, not the luxurious start a girl has who marries wealth.
Deny that you married Charles for his money.
But John and I are so congenial in our tastes that we were impervious to hardship or unhappiness.
Do you love each other? Is it really true?
Did you have all the romance of starving for his art?
She's taunting you. Get even with her.
Not for long. Prince Rear soon discovered John's genius and introduced him royally to wealthy Parisians who gave him many orders.
Are you telling the truth or are you lying?
If he had so many opportunities there, you must have had great inducements to come back to the States.
We did, but not the kind you think.
John became the rage among Americans traveling in France too, and they simply insisted upon his coming here.
Whom is he going to paint here?
What names dare I make up?
Just as present, Miss Dorothy Ainsworth of Oregon is posing. You may not know the name, but she is the daughter of a wealthy miner who found gold in Alaska.
I dare say there are many Western people we have never heard of.
You must have found social life in New York very interesting, Harriet, after the simplicity of our hometown.
There's no need to remind us that our beginnings were the same.
Of course, Charles's family made everything delightful for me. They are so well connected.
Flatter her.
I heard it mentioned yesterday that you had made yourself very popular. Someone said you were very clever.
Who told you that?
Nobody.
Oh, confidence should be suspected, respected. I mean, they said too that you are gaining some reputation as a critic of art.
I make no pretenses.
Are you and Mr. Goodrick interested in the same things too?
No.
Yes, indeed. Charles and I are inseparable.
I wonder.
Do have another cake.
Oh, yes.
I really shouldn't after my big luncheon. John took me to the Ritz and we are invited to the Bedfords for dinner. They have such a magnificent house near the drive. I really shouldn't, but the cake is so good.
Starving.
More tea.
Yes.
No, thank you. How wonderfully life has arranged itself for you. Wealth, position, a happy marriage, every opportunity to enjoy all pleasures, beauty, art. How happy you must be.
Call me happy. I've never been happy since I gave up John. All these years without him, a future without him. No, I shall win him back away from you. Away from you.
I sometimes think it is unfair for anyone to be as happy as I am. Charles and I are just as much in love now as when we were married. To me, he's just the dearest man in the world.
My John is. I love him so much I could die for him. I'm going through hunger and want to make him great, and he loves me. He worships me.
I should like to meet Mr. Goodrick. Bring him to our studio. John has some sketches to show. Not many, because all the portraits have been purchased by the subjects. He gets as much as $4,000 now.
Don't pay that much.
As much as that?
It is not really too much when one considers that John is in the foremost rank of artists today. A picture painted by him now will double and treble in value.
It's a lie. He's growing weak with despair.
Does he paint all day long?
No, he draws advertisements for bread.
When you and your husband come to see us, telephone first.
Yes, so we can get the advertisements out of the way.
Otherwise, you might arrive while he has a sitter, and John refuses to let me disturb him then.
Make her ask for an order.
Lagrange offered to paint me for 1,000.
Louis Lagrange's reputation isn't worth more than that.
Well, I've heard his work well mentioned.
Yes, he is doing splendid work.
Oh, dear me, no. He is only praised by the masses. He is accepted not at all by artists themselves.
Must I really pay the full price?
Lagrange thought I would make a good subject.
Let her fish for it.
Of course you would. Why don't you let the Lagrange paint you if you trust him?
She doesn't seem anxious to have John do it.
But if Lagrange isn't accepted by artists, it would be a waste of time to pose for him, wouldn't it?
Yes, I think it would.
Give us the order. John is so despondent he can't endure much longer. Help us. Help me. Save us.
Don't seem too eager.
And yet, if he charges only 1,000, one might consider it.
If you really wish to be painted, why don't you give a little more and have a portrait really worthwhile? John might be induced to do you for a little below his usual price, considering that you used to be such good friends.
Hurrah!
That's very nice of you to suggest. Of course, I don't know.
God's sake, say yes.
Of course, I don't know whether John would. He is very peculiar in these matters. He sets his value on his work and thinks it beneath him to discuss price.
You needn't try to make us feel small.
Still, I might quite delicately mention to him that inasmuch as you have many influential friends, you would be very glad to
Finish what? I don't want to say.
Help her out.
Oh, yes. Introductions will follow the exhibition of my portrait. No doubt
Be patronizing.
No doubt I shall be able to introduce your husband to his advantage.
Saved.
If I find John in a propitious mood, I shall take pleasure for your sake in telling him about your beauty. Just as you are sitting now would be a lovely pose.
We can go now.
Don't let her think she's doing us a favor.
It will give me pleasure to add my name to your husband's list of patronesses.
Run home and tell John the good news.
I little guessed when I came for a pleasant chat about old times that it would develop into business arrangements. I had no idea, Harriet, that you had any intention of being painted. By Lagrange, too. Well, I came just in time to rescue you.
Run home and tell John. Hurry, hurry.
Manage the order very neatly. She doesn't suspect that you wanted it.
Now, if I am not satisfied with my portrait, I shall blame you, Margaret, dear. I'm relying upon your opinion of John's talent.
She doesn't suspect what you came for. Run home and tell John.
You always had a brilliant mind, Margaret.
Ah, it is you who flatter now.
You don't have to stay so long. Hurry home.
One does not flatter when one tells the truth.
I must be going, or you will have me completely under your spell.
Yes, do go. I have to dress for dinner.
Oh, don't hurry.
I hate you.
No, really, I must. But I hope we shall see each other often at the studio. I find you so stimulating.
I hate you.
It is indeed gratifying to find a kindred spirit.
I came for your gold.
How delightful it is to know you again.
I am going to make you and your husband suffer.
My kind regards to John.
He has forgotten all about you.
He will be so happy to receive them.
I can hardly wait to talk to him again.
I shall wait, then, until you send me word.
I'll speak to John about it as soon as I can and tell you when to come.
Harriet takes Margaret's hand affectionately. Hetty and Maggie rush at each other, throw back their veils, and fling their speeches fiercely at each other.
I love him. I love him.
He's starving. I'm starving.
I'm going to take him away from you.
I want your money and your influence.
I'm going
to rob you.
Rob you.
There is a cymbal crash. The lights go out and come up again slowly, leaving only Margaret and Harriet visible.
I've had such a delightful afternoon.
It has been a joy to see you.
Goodbye.
Goodbye, my dear.
Curtain. The Outside by Susan Glaspell, 1917. Scene: a room in a house which was once a life-saving station. Since ceasing to be that, it has taken on no other character, except that of a place which no one cares either to preserve or change. It is painted the life-saving gray, but has not the life-saving freshness. This is one end of what was once the big boat room, and at the ceiling is seen a part of the framework from which the boat once swung. About two-thirds of the back wall is open because of the big sliding door of the type of barn door, and through this open door are seen the sand dunes, and beyond them the woods. At one point, the line where woods and dunes meet stands out clearly, and there are indicated the rude things, vines, bushes, which form the outer uneven rim of the woods, the only things that grow in the sand. At another point, a sand hill is menacing the woods. This old life-saving station is at a point where the sea curves, so through the open door the sea also is seen. The station is located on the outside shore of Cape Cod, at the point near the tip of the cape, where it makes the final curve which forms the Provincetown harbor. The dunes are hills and strange forms of sand on which, in places, grows the stiff beach grass, struggle, dogged growing against odds. At right of the big sliding door is a drift of sand, and at the top of buried beach grass is seen on this. There is a door left, and at right of big sliding door is a slanting wall. Door in this is ajar at rise of curtain, and through the door, Bradford and Tony, lifesavers, are seen bending over a man's body, attempting to restore respiration. The captain of the lifesavers comes into view outside the big open door at left. He appears to have been hurrying, peers in, sees the men, and goes quickly to them.
I'll take it now, boys.
Oh, no need for anybody to take it, Captain. He was dead when we picked him up.
Danny Sears was dead when we picked him up, but we brought him back. I'll go on a while.
The two men who have been bending over the body rise, stretch to relax, and come into the room.
Work. Trying to put life in the dead.
Where'd you find him, Joe?
In front of this house, not 40 feet out.
What'd you bring him up here for?
Force of habit, I guess. I mean, we brought so many of them back up here. And then it was kind of unfriendly down where he was, and the wind was spitting the sea onto you until he'd have no way of knowing he was ashore.
Lucky I was not sooner or later as I walked by for my watch.
You have accommodating ways, Tony. No sooner or later. I wouldn't say it of many Portuguese. Yeah, but the sea is as friendly as a kitten alongside the women that live here. Ali Mayo. I mean, they're both crazy. Had that door open, sweeping out. And when we come along, she backs off and stands looking at us, just looking. Lord, I just wanted to get him somewhere else. So I kicked this door open with my foot and got him away. I mean, if he did have any notion of coming back to life, he wouldn't have come if he'd have seen her. I wouldn't.
You know who he is, Joe?
I never saw him before.
Mitchell telephoned from High Head that a dory came ashore here.
Last night wasn't the best night for a dory. I mean, not that I couldn't have stayed in one. Some men can't stay on a dory, and some can't. Oh, that boy's dead, Captain.
Then I ain't doing him any harm.
Hey, this is the first time you ever been in this place, ain't it, Tony?
I never was here before.
Yeah, well, I was here before. And the old man, well, he lived here for 27 years. Lord, the things that happened here. Yeah, there have been dead ones carried through that door. Lord. And the ones I've carried, I carried in Bill Collins and Lou Harvey, and it's all over now. I mean, you ain't seen no wrecks. Don't ever think you have. No, I was here the night that Jenny Snow was out there. Now there was a wreck. Yeah, we got the boat that stood there down that bank. Lord, how do we ever do it? The sand has put his place on the blink, all right. Yeah, and then when it gets too godforsaken for a life-saving station, a lady takes it for a summer residence, and then spends the winter. Yeah, she's a cheerful one.
A woman, she makes things pretty. This is not like a place where a woman lives. On the floor, there's nothing. On the wall, there's nothing. Things do not hang on other things.
No, things do not hang on other things. Yeah, in my opinion, the woman's crazy. Sitting over there on that sand. Hey, what's she looking at? There ain't nothing to see. And I know the woman that works for her is crazy. Allie Mayo. She's a Provincetown girl. I mean, she was all right once, but
Mrs. Patrick comes in from the hall at the right. She is a city woman, a sophisticated person who has been caught into something as unlike the old life as the dunes are unlike a meadow. At the moment, she is excited and angry.
You have no right here. This isn't a life-saving station anymore. Just because it used to be, I don't see why you should think, well, this is my house and I want my house to myself.
Well, I must say, lady, I would think that any house could be a life-saving station when the sea has a scent of man to it.
I don't want him here. I must have my house to myself.
You'll get your house to yourself when I've made up my mind. There's no more life in this man. Good many lives have been saved in this house, Mrs. Patrick. I believe that's your name. And if there's any chance of bringing one more back from the dead, the fact that you own this house ain't gonna make a damn bit of difference to me.
I must have my house to myself.
Hell with such a woman.
He moves the man he is working with and slams the door shut. As the captain spoke, Allie Mayo has appeared outside the wide door which gives onto the dunes, a bleak woman who at first seems little more than a part of the sand before which she stands. But as she listens to this conflict, one suspects in her that peculiar intensity of twisted things which grow in unfavoring places.
I don't want them here. I must.
But suddenly she retreats and is gone.
well, I couldn't say, Allie Mayo, that you work for any too kind-hearted a lady. What's the matter with the woman? Does she want folks to die? It appears to break her all up to see somebody trying to save a life. What do you work with such a fish for? A crazy fish. Yeah, that's what I call the woman. I mean, I've seen her day after day sitting over there where the dunes meet the woods, just sitting there, just looking. I believe she likes to see the sand slipping down on the woods. It pleases her to see something getting buried, I guess.
Allie Mayo, who has stepped inside the door and moved half across the room towards the corridor at the right, is arrested by this last, stands a moment as if seeing through something, then slowly on and out.
Yeah, some coffee tastes good. But coffee in this house? Well, no. It might make somebody feel better. You want me now, Captain?
No.
Oh, that boy's dead, Captain.
Danny Sears was dead too. Shut the door. I don't want to hear that woman's voice ever again.
They're a cheerful pair of women living in this cheerful place. A place that lifesavers had to turn over to the sand. This Patrick woman used to be all right. She and her husband was summer folks over in town. They used to picnic over here on the outside. It was Joe Dyer. He's always talking to the summer folks. It told him the government was going to build a new station and sell this one by sealed bids. I heard them talking about it. They was sitting right down there on the beach, eating their supper. They was going to put a fireplace and they was going to paint it bright colors and have parties over here. Summer folk notions. Their bid won it. But who won it? Buried house you couldn't move?
I see no bright colors.
Don't you? How astonishing. You must be colorblind. And I guess we're the first party. I was in Bill Joseph's grocery store one day last November when in she comes, Mrs. Patrick from New York. I've come to take the old life-saving station, says she. I'm going to sleep over there tonight. Huh. Bill is used to queer ways. He deals with summer folks, but that got him. November, an empty house, a buried house, you might say, off here on the outside shore, way across the sand from man or beast. I mean, he got it out of her, not by what she said, but by the way she looked at what he said, that her husband had died and she was running off to hide herself, I guess. And a person would feel sorry for her if she weren't so standoffish and so doggone mean. But mean folks have got minds of their own. She slept here that night. Bill had men hauling things till after dark, bed, stove, coal, and then she wanted somebody to work for her. Somebody, says she, that doesn't say an unnecessary word. Well, when then Bill comes to the back of the store, I said, well, it looks to me as if Allie Mayo was the party she's looking for. See, Allie Mayo has got a prejudice against words. Or maybe she likes them so well, she's saving of them. She's not spoke an unnecessary word for 20 years. She's got her reasons. Women whose men go to sea ain't always talkative.
The captain comes out. He closes the door behind him and stands there beside it. He looks tired and disappointed. Both look at him.
I wonder who he was.
Young. Guess he's not been much at sea.
I hate to leave the dead, even in this house. But we can get him. We can get right back for him. This old place used to be more friendly. Oh, Joe. We brought a good many of them back here.
Hey, Danny Sears is tending bar in Boston now.
The three men go. As they're going around the drift of sand, Allie Mayo comes in carrying a pot of coffee, sees them leaving, puts down the coffee pot, looks at the door the captain has closed, moves towards it as if drawn. Mrs. Patrick follows her in.
They've gone,
Mrs. Mayo nods.
and they're leaving him? Then they have no right. Just because it used to be their place, I want my house to myself.
She snatches her coat and scarf from a hook and starts through the big door towards the dunes.
Wait. If I could say that, I could say more. That boy in there, his face uncovered something. For 20 years, I did what you're doing. And I can tell you it's not the way. We've been married 2 years. Married 2 years. He had a chance to go north on a whaler. Time's hard, he had to go. A year and a half it was to be. A year and a half. 2 years we've been married. He went away. The days after he was gone, I heard at first. Last letter said farther north, not another chance to write till on the way home. 6 months, another. I didn't hear. Nobody ever heard. I used to talk as much as any girl in Provincetown. Jim used to tease me about my talking, but they'd come in and talk to me. They'd say, "You may hear yet." They talk about what must have happened. And one day, a woman who'd been my friend all my life said, "Suppose he was to walk in." I got up and drove her from my kitchen. And from that time till this, I've not said a word I didn't have to say. The ice that caught Jim caught me. It's not the way. You're not the only woman in the world whose husband is dead.
Dead? My husband's not dead.
He's not?
The woman in the door is crying, suddenly picks up her coat, which has fallen to the floor, and steps outside.
Wait.
Wait? Don't you think you've said enough? They told me you didn't say an unnecessary word.
I don't.
And you can see I should think that you've bungled into things you know nothing about.
When you keep still for 20 years, you know things you didn't know you knew. I know why you're doing that. Don't bury the only thing that will grow. Let it grow.
The woman outside, still crying under her breath, turns abruptly and starts toward the line where dunes and woods meet.
I know where you're going. What you'll try to do over there. Bury it. The life in you. Bury it. Watching the sand bury the woods. But I'll tell you something. They fight too. The woods. They fight for life the way that captain fought for life in there.
And lose the way he lost in there.
They don't lose.
Don't lose? I have walked on the tops of buried trees.
And vines will grow over the sand that covers the trees and hold it. And other trees will grow over the buried trees.
I've watched the sand slip down on the vines that reach out the farthest.
Another vine will reach that spot. Strange little things that reach out the farthest.
And will be buried soonest.
And hold the sand for things behind them. They say the wood that guards a town.
I care nothing about a wood to guard a town. This is the outside. These dunes where only beach grass grows. This outer shore where men can't live. The outside. You who were born here and who die here have named it that.
Yes, we named it that, and we had reason. He died here, and many a one before him, but many another reached the harbor. The outside, but an arm that bends to make a harbor where men are safe.
I'm outside the harbor, on the dunes, land, not life.
Dunes meet woods, and woods hold dunes from a town that's shore to a harbor.
This is the outside. Sand. Sand that covers, hills of sand that move and cover.
Woods. Woods to hold the moving hills from Provincetown. Provincetown. Where they turn when boats can't live at sea. Did you ever see the sails come round here when the sky is dark? A line of them swift to the harbor where their children live? Go back! Back to your edge of the woods that's on the edge of the dunes.
The edge of life, where life trails off to dwarfed things not worth a name.
Not worth a name. And meeting the outside.
They're what the sand will let them be. They take strange shapes like shapes of blown sand.
Meeting the outside. I know why you came here. To this house that had been given up. On this shore where only savors of life try to live. I know what holds you on these dunes and draws you over there, but other things are true besides the things you want to see.
How do you know they are? Where have you been for 20 years?
Outside. 20 years. That's why I know how brave they are. You'll not find peace there again. Go back and watch them fight.
You're a cruel woman, a hard, insolent woman. I knew what I was doing. What do you know about me? About me? I didn't go to the outside. I was left there. I'm only trying to get along. Everything that can hurt me, I want buried deep. Spring is here. This morning I knew it. Spring, coming through the storm to take me to hurt me. That's why I couldn't bear things that made me know I feel. You haven't felt for so long. You don't know what it means, but I tell you, spring is here. And now you take that from me. The thing that made me know they would be buried in my heart. Those things I can't live and know I feel. You're more cruel than the sea. But other things are true besides the things you want to see. Outside, springs will come when I will not know that it is spring. What would there be for me but the outside? What was there for you? What did you ever find after you lost the thing you wanted?
I found what I find now I know. The edge of life, to hold life behind me.
You call what you are life? Oh, bleak as those ugly things that grow in the sand.
Ugly.
I have known life. I have known life. You're like this cape, a line of land way out to sea. Land, not life.
A harbor far at sea. Land that encloses and gives shelter from the storm.
Outside sea, outer shore, dunes, land, not life.
Outside sea, outer shore, dark with the wood that once was ships. Dunes. Strange land, not life. Woods, town, and harbor. The line, stunted, straggly line that meets the outside face to face and fights for what itself can never be. Lonely line, brave and growing.
It loses.
It wins.
The farthest life is buried.
And life grows over buried life. It will. And springs will come when you will want to know that it is spring.
The captain and Bradford appear behind the drift of sand. They have a stretcher. To get away from them, Mrs. Patrick steps farther into the room. Allie Mayo shrinks into her corner. The men come in, open the closed door, and go in the room where they left the dead man. A moment later, they're seen outside the big open door, bearing the man away. Mrs. Patrick watches them from sight.
Savers of life. You savers of life, meeting the outside, meeting.
But she cannot say it mockingly again. In saying it, something of what it means is broken through, rises, herself lost, feeling her way into the wonder of life.
Meeting the outside.
It grows in her as curtain lowers slowly. Trifles by Susan Glaspell, 1916. Scene: the kitchen in the now abandoned farmhouse of John Wright, a gloomy kitchen, and left without having been put in order, unwashed pans under the sink, a loaf of bread outside the bread box, a dish towel on the table, other signs of incompleted work. At the rear, the outer doors open and the sheriff comes in, followed by the county attorney and Hale. The sheriff and Hale are men in middle life. The county attorney is a young man. All are much bundled up and go at once to the stove. They're followed by the two women, the sheriff's wife first. She's a slight, wiry woman, a thin, nervous face. Mrs. Hale is larger and would ordinarily be called more comfortable looking, but she is disturbed now and looks fearfully about as she enters. The women have come in slowly and stand close together near the door.
This feels good. Come up to the fire, ladies.
I'm not cold.
Now, Mr. Hale, before we move things about, you explain to Mr. Henderson just what you saw when you came here yesterday morning.
By the way, has anything been moved? Are things just as you left them yesterday?
It's just the same. When it dropped below zero last night, I thought I'd better send Frank out this morning to make a fire for us. No use getting pneumonia with a big case on. But I told him not to touch anything except the stove. And you know Frank.
Somebody should have been left here yesterday.
Oh, yesterday, when I had to send Frank to Morris Center for that man who went crazy, I want you to know I had my hands full yesterday. I knew you could get back from Omaha by today, and as long as I went over everything here myself.
Well, Mr. Hale, tell us just what happened when you came here yesterday morning.
Harry and I started town with a load of potatoes. We came along the road from my place, and as I got here, I said, well, I'm going to see if I can't get John Wright to go in with me on a party telephone. I spoke to Wright about it once before, and he put me off, saying folks talk too much anyway, and all he asked was peace and quiet. Well, I guess you know how much he talked himself. But I thought maybe if I went to the house and talked about it before his wife, though I said to Harry that I didn't know what his wife wanted made much difference to John.
Let's talk about that later, Mr. Hale. I do want to talk about that, but tell now just what happened when you got to the house.
Well, I didn't hear or see anything. I knocked at the door, and still it was all quiet inside. I knew they must be up. It was past 8 o'clock, so I knocked again, and I thought I heard somebody say, "Come in." I wasn't sure. Not sure yet, but I opened the door, this door, and there in that rocker sat Mrs. Wright.
They all look at the rocker.
What was she doing?
She was rocking back and forth. She had her apron in her hand, and she was kind of pleating it.
And how did she look?
Well, she looked queer.
How do you mean queer?
Well, as if she didn't know what she was going to do next, and kind of done up.
How did she seem to feel about your coming?
Well, I don't think she minded one way or the other. She didn't pay much attention. I said, "How do, Ms. Wright? It's cold, ain't it?" And she said, "Is it?" And went on kind of pleating at her apron. Well, I was surprised, but she didn't ask me to come up to the stove or to sit down, but just sat there, not even looking at me. So I said, I want to see John. And then she laughed, I guess. I guess you would call it a laugh. I thought of Harry and the team outside, so I said a little sharp, "Can I see John?" "No," she says, kind of dull like. "Well, ain't he home?" says I. "Yes," says she, "he's home." "Well, why can't I see him?" I asked her, out of patience. "'Cause he's dead," says she. "Well, dead?" says I. She just nodded her head, not getting a bit excited, but rocking back and forth. "Well, where is he?" says I, not knowing what to say. She just pointed upstairs like that. I got up with the idea of going up there. I walked from there to here, and then I says, "Well, why? What did he die of?" "He died of a rope around his neck," says she. Just went pleating at her apron. Well, I went out and I called Harry. I thought I might need help. We went upstairs, and there he was, lying.
I think I'd rather have you go into that upstairs, where you can point it all out. Just go on now with the rest of the story.
Well, my first thought was to get that rope off. It looked, but Harry, he went up to him and he said, "No, he's dead all right, and we better not touch anything." So we went back down the stairs, and she was still sitting there that same way. "Has anyone been notified?" I asked. "No," says she, unconcerned. "Well, who did this, Mrs. Wright?" said Harry. "Well, he said it businesslike," and she stopped pleating her apron. I don't know," she says. "You don't know?" says Harry. "Well, no," says she. "Well, weren't you sleeping in the bed with him?" Says Harry. "Yes," says she, "but I was on the inside. Somebody slipped a rope around his neck and strangled him, and you didn't wake up," says Harry. "I didn't wake up," she said after him. We must have looked as if we didn't see how that could be, for after a minute she said, "I sleep sound." Harry was going to ask her some more questions, but I said maybe we ought to let her tell her story first to the coroner or the sheriff. So Harry went as fast as he could to Rivers' place where there's a telephone.
And what did Mrs. Wright do when she knew that you had gone for the coroner?
Well, she moved from that chair to this one over here and just sat there with her hands held together and looking down. I got a feeling that I ought to make some conversation. So I said I'd come in to see if John wanted to put in a telephone. And at that, she started to laugh. And then she stopped and she looked at me scared. I don't know. Maybe it wasn't scared. I wouldn't like to say that it was. Soon Harry got back, and then Dr. Lloyd came, and you, Mr. Peters. And so I guess that's all I know that you don't.
Well, I guess we'll go upstairs first and then out to the barn and around there. You're convinced that there is nothing important here? Nothing that would point to any motive?
Nothing here but kitchen things.
The county attorney, after again looking around the kitchen, opens the door of a cupboard closet. He gets up on a chair and looks on a shelf, pulls his hand away, sticky.
Oh, here's a nice mess.
Oh, her fruit, it did freeze. She worried about that when it turned so cold. She said the fire'd go out and her jars would break.
Yeah. Well, can you beat the women? Held for murder and worrying about her preserves.
I guess before we're through, she may have something more serious than preserves to worry about.
Well, women are used to worrying over trifles.
The two women move a little closer together.
And yet, for all their worries, what would we do without the ladies? Dirty towels. Not much of a housekeeper, would you say, ladies?
There's a great deal of work to be done on a farm.
To be sure. And yet, I know there are some Dickinson County farmhouses which do not have such roller towels.
These towels get dirty awful quick. Men's hands aren't always as clean as they might be.
Ah, loyal to your sex, I see. But you and Mrs. Wright were neighbors. I suppose you were friends too?
I've not seen much of her late years. I've not been in this house more than a year.
And why was that? You didn't like her?
I liked her all well enough. Farmers' wives have their hands full, Mr. Henderson. And then
Yes.
it never seemed a very cheerful place.
No, it's not cheerful. I shouldn't say she had the homemaking instinct.
Well, I don't know as Wright had either.
You mean that they didn't get on very well?
No, I don't mean anything, but I don't think a place would be any cheerfuler for John Wright's being in it.
I'd like to talk more of that a little later. I want to get a lay of things upstairs now.
I suppose anything Mrs. Peters does be all right. She was to take in some clothes for her, and a few little things. We left in such a hurry yesterday.
Yes, but I would like to see what you take, Mrs. Peters, and keep an eye out for anything that might be of use to us.
Yes, Mr. Henderson.
The women listen to the men's steps on the stairs, then look about the kitchen.
I'd hate to have men coming in my kitchen, snooping around and criticizing.
Of course, it's no more than their duty.
Duty's all right, but I guess that deputy sheriff that came out to make the fire might have gotten a little of this on. Wish I thought of that sooner. Seems mean to talk about her for not having things slicked up when she had to come away in such a hurry.
She had the bread set.
She was going to put this in there. It's a shame about all her fruit. I wonder if it's all gone. Oh, I think there's some in here. That's all right, Mrs. Peters. Yes, here. Oh, this is cherries. I declare, I believe that's the only one.
She gets down, bottle in her hand, goes to the sink and wipes it off on the outside.
She'll feel awful bad after all her hard work in the hot weather. I remember the afternoon I put up my cherries last summer.
She puts the bottle on the big kitchen table, center of the room. With a sigh, is about to sit down in the rocking chair. Before she's seated, realizes what chair it is. With a slow look at it, steps back. The chair which she has touched rocks back and forth.
Well, I must get those things from the front room closet. You coming with me, Mrs. Hale? You could help me carry them.
They go in the other room. They reappear, Mrs. Peters carrying a dress and skirt, Mrs. Hale following with a pair of shoes.
My, it's cold in there.
She puts the clothes on the big table and hurries to the stove.
Right was close. I think maybe that's why she kept so much to herself. She didn't even belong to the Ladies' Aid. Suppose she felt she couldn't do her part, and then you don't enjoy things when you feel shabby. She used to wear pretty clothes and be lively. When she was Minnie Foster, one of the town girls singing in the choir, but that was 30 years ago. This all you was to take in?
She said she wanted an apron. Funny thing to want, for there isn't much to get you dirty in jail, goodness knows. But I suppose just to make her feel more natural. She said they were in the top drawer in the cupboard. Yes, here. And then her little shawl that always hung behind the door.
She opens the stair door and looks.
Yes, here it is.
She quickly shuts the door leading upstairs.
Mrs. Peters?
Yes, Mrs. Hale?
Do you think she did it?
Oh, I don't know.
I don't think she did. Asking for an apron and her little shawl, worrying about her fruit.
Mr. Peters says it looks bad for her. Mr. Henderson is awful sarcastic in a speech, and he'll make fun of her saying she didn't wake up.
Well, I guess John Wright didn't wake up when they was slipping that rope under his neck.
No, it's strange. It must have been done awful crafty and still. They say it was such a funny way to kill a man, rigging it all up like that.
It's just what Mr. Hale said. There was a gun in the house. He says that's what he can't understand.
Mr. Henderson said coming out, that what was needed for the case was a motive, Something to show anger or sudden feeling.
I don't see any signs of anger around here. It's wiped to here. Oh, goodness. Wonder how they're finding things upstairs. I hope she had it a little more read up there, you know. Seems kind of sneaking, locking her up in town and then coming out here and trying to get her own house to turn against her.
But Mrs. Hale, the law is the law.
I suppose 'tis. Better loosen your things, Mrs. Peters. You won't feel them when you go out.
Mrs. Peters takes off her fur tippet, goes to hang it on a hook at back of room, stands looking at the under part of the small corner table.
She was piecing a quilt.
She brings the large sewing basket, and they look at the bright pieces.
The log cabin pattern. Pretty, isn't it? Wonder if she was just gonna quilt it or just knot it.
Footsteps have been heard coming down the stairs. The sheriff enters, followed by Hale and the county attorney.
They wonder if she was going to quilt it or just knot it.
The men laugh. The women look abashed.
Frank's fire didn't do much up there, did it? Well, let's go out to the barn and get that cleared up.
The men go outside.
I don't know as there's anything so strange, our taking up our time with little things while we're waiting for them to get the evidence. I don't see as it's anything to laugh about.
Of course, they've got awful important things on their minds.
Pulls up a chair and joins Mrs. Hale at the table.
Mrs. Peters, look at this one. This is the one she was working on, and look at the sewing. All the rest of it has been so nice and even, and look at this, it's all over the place. Why, it looks as if she didn't know what she was about.
After she has said this, they look at each other, then start to glance back at the door. After an instant, Mrs. Hale has pulled at a knot and ripped the sewing.
Oh, what are you doing, Mrs. Hale?
Just pulling out a stitch or two that's not sewed very good. Bad sewing always made me fidgety.
I don't think we ought to touch things.
I'll just finish up this end. Mrs. Peters.
Yes, Mrs. Hale?
What do you suppose she was so nervous about?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know if she was nervous. I sometimes so awful queer when I'm just tired. Well, I must get these things wrapped up. They may be through sooner than we think. I wonder where I can find a piece of paper and string.
In that cupboard, maybe.
Right. Here's a bird cage. Did she have a bird, Mrs. Hale?
I don't know whether she did or not. I've not been here for so long. There was a man around last year selling canaries cheap, but I don't know if she took one. Maybe she did. She used to sing real pretty herself.
Seems funny to think of a bird here, but she must have had one, or why would she have a cage? I wonder what happened to it.
Suppose maybe the cat got it.
No, she didn't have a cat. She's got that feeling some people have about cats, being afraid of them. My cat got in her room and she was real upset and asked me to take it out.
Oh, my sister Bessie was like that. Queer, ain't it?
Right, look at this door. It's broke. One hinge is pulled apart.
Looks as if someone must have been rough with it.
Why, yes.
She brings the cage forward and puts it on the table.
I wish if they were going to find any evidence, they'd be about it. I don't like this place.
But I'm awful glad you came here with me, Mrs. Hale. It would be lonesome for me sitting alone here.
It would, wouldn't it? But I tell you what I do wish, Mrs. Peters. I wish I had come over sometimes when she was here. I wish I had.
But of course, you were awful busy, Mrs. Hale. Your house and your children.
I could have come. I stayed away because it weren't cheerful. And that's why I ought to have come. I never liked this place. Maybe because it's down a hollow and you don't see the road. I don't know what it is, but it's a lonesome place and always was. I wish I had come to see Minnie Foster sometimes. I can see her now.
Well, you mustn't reproach yourself, Mrs. Hale. Somehow we just don't see how it is with other folks until something comes up.
Not having children makes less work, but makes a quiet house and right out to work all day and no company when he did come in. Did you know John Wright, Mrs. Peters?
Not to know him. I've seen him in town. They say he was a good man.
Yeah, good. He didn't drink, kept his word as well as most, I guess, and paid his debts. He was a hard man, Mrs. Peters. Just to pass the time of day with him, like a raw wind that gets to the bone. I should think she would have wanted a bird. But what do you suppose went with it?
I don't know, unless it got sick and died.
She reaches over and swings the broken door, swings it again. Both women watch it.
You weren't raised around here, were you? You didn't know her.
Not till they brought her yesterday.
She, come to think of it, she was like a kind of bird herself, real sweet and pretty, but kind of timid and fluttery. How she did change. Tell you what, Mrs. Peters, why don't you take the quilt in with you? It might help her take up her mind.
Why, I think that's a real nice idea, Mrs. Hale. There couldn't possibly be any objection to it, could there? Now, just what would I take? I wonder if her patches are in here with her things.
They look in the sewing basket.
Oh, well, here's some red. I expect this has got sewing things in it, right? Pretty box. Looks like something somebody would give you. Maybe her scissors were in here. Oh, there's something wrapped up in this piece of silk.
Why, this isn't her scissors.
Oh, Mrs. Peters, it's
the bird.
But Mrs. Peters, look at it. Look at its neck. It's all other side too.
Somebody wrung its neck.
Their eyes meet. A look of growing comprehension, of horror. Steps are heard outside. Mrs. Hale slips the box under the quilt pieces and sinks into her chair. Enter the sheriff and county attorney. Mrs. Peter rises.
Well, ladies, have you decided whether she was going to quilt it or knot it?
We think she was going to knot it.
Well, that's interesting, I'm sure. Has the bird flown?
We think the cat got it.
Is there a cat?
Mrs. Hale glances in a quick, covert way at Mrs. Peters.
Well, not now. They're superstitious, you know. They leave.
No sign at all of anyone having come from the outside, their own room. Now, let's go up again and go over it piece by piece. It would have been someone who knew just the...
Mrs. Peters sits down. The two women sit there not looking at one another, but as if peering into something and at the same time holding back. When they talk now, it is in the manner of feeling their way over strange ground, as if afraid of what they are saying, but as if they cannot help saying it.
She liked the bird. She was going to bury it in that pretty box.
When I was a girl, my kitten, there was a boy took a hatchet, and before my eyes, before I could get there, if they hadn't held me back, I would have hurt him.
I wonder how it would seem never to have had any children around. No, Wright wouldn't like the bird, a thing that sang. She used to sing. He killed that too.
We don't know who killed the bird.
I knew John Wright.
It was an awful thing done in this house that night, Mrs. Hale. Killing a man while he slept, slipping a rope around his neck, choked the life out of him.
Nick. Choked the life out of him.
Her hand goes out and rests on the bird cage.
We don't know who killed him. We don't know.
If there'd been years and years of nothing and a bird to sing to you, it would be awful still after the bird was still.
I know what that stillness is. When we homesteaded in Dakota and my first baby died after he was 2 years old, and me with no other. And
How soon do you suppose they'll be through looking for the evidence?
I know what stillness is. The law has got to punish crime, Mrs. Hale.
I wish you'd seen Minnie Foster when she wore a white dress with blue ribbons and stood up there in the choir and sang. I wish I'd come over here once in a while. That was a crime. That was a crime. Who's going to punish that?
We mustn't take on.
I might have known she needed help. I know how things can be for women. I tell you, it's queer, Miss Peters. We live close together and we live far apart. We all go through the same things. It's all just a different kind of the same thing. If I was you, I wouldn't tell her fruit is gone. Tell her it ain't. Tell her it's all right. Take this in to prove it to her. She may never know whether it was broke or not.
Mrs. Peters takes the bottle, looks about for something to wrap it in, takes petticoat from the clothes brought from the other room, very nervously begins winding this around the bottle.
My, it's a good thing the men couldn't hear us. Couldn't they just laugh, getting all stirred up over a little thing like a dead canary? As if that could have anything to do with it. Wouldn't they laugh?
The men are heard coming downstairs.
Maybe they would. Maybe they wouldn't.
No, Peters, it's all perfectly clear, except the reason for doing it. But you know, juries, when it comes to women, if there was something definite, some definite thing, something to show, something to make a story about, a thing that would connect up with this strange way of doing it.
The women's eyes meet for an instant. Enter Hale from the outer door.
Well, I've got the team around. It's pretty cold out there.
I'm going to stay here a while by myself. You can send Frank out for me, can't you? I want to go over everything. I'm not satisfied that we can't do better.
Do you want to see what Mrs. Peters is going to take in?
The lawyer goes to the table, picks up the apron, and laughs.
Oh, I guess they're not very dangerous things the ladies have picked out. No, Mrs. Peters doesn't need supervising. For that matter, a sheriff's wife is married to the law. Ever think of it that way, Mrs. Peters?
Not just that way.
Married to the law. I just want you to come in here a minute, George. We ought to take a look at these windows.
Oh, windows.
We'll be right out here, Mr. Hale.
Hale goes outside. The sheriff follows the county attorney into the other room. Then Mrs. Hale rises, hands tight together, looking intensely at Mrs. Peters, whose eyes make a slow turn, finally meeting Mrs. Hale's. A moment Mrs. Hale holds her, then her own eyes point the way to where the box is concealed. Suddenly, Mrs. Peters throws back quilt pieces and tries to put the box in the bag she is wearing. It is too big. She opens the box, starts to take the bird out, cannot touch it, goes to pieces, stands there, helpless. Sound of a knob turning in the other room. Mrs. Hale snatches the box and puts it in the pocket of her big coat. Enter the county attorney and sheriff.
Well, Henry, at least we found out that she was not going to quilt it. She was going to, what is it you call it, ladies?
We call it not it, Mr. Henderson.
Curtain. End of play. Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Colin Palmer. I'm the vice president of the North Fork Community Theater, and I want to thank you all so much for attending this, our second evening of plays with our 3 one-act plays by Alice Gertsenberg and Susan Glaspell. These readings came out of a weekly reading series, actually just for actors, usually no audience, that Huck Hirsch, who is our Sheriff Peters, has put together over a year ago, and it's been going every single week. Thank you so much, Huck. So we wanted there to be a little way to have some audience members get to experience what our weekly readings are like. I'd like to invite all of the actors to all turn their cameras on as we do a quick little curtain call for everyone. So the first play that we had, Overtones by Alice Gerstenberg, featured Wendy Peterson as Harriet, Shelley Storch as Hetty, Nicole Gebler as Margaret, and Haley Unger as Maggie. Then our second play was The Outside by Susan Glaspell, where we had John Tramontana as the captain, Dan Waiulo as Bradford, Matt Eager as Tony, Jen Eager as Mrs. Patrick, and Sarah Storchohan as Allie Mayo. And finally, Trifles by Susan Glaspell, where we had Pete Peterson as George Henderson, the attorney, Huck Hirsch as Sheriff Peters, Christian Lepore as Lewis Hale, Shelley Storch again as Mrs. Peters, and Sarah Storchohan again as Mrs. Hale. Thank you all so much to all of the actors for participating. This was week 2 of 4. So we have 2 more plays each of the following Saturdays for the rest of the month. Next week, we're going to be presenting Pygmalion by George Bernard Shaw. And the week after that, we'll be presenting Lady Windermere's Fan by Oscar Wilde. You can watch it at the same place right here on the NFCT YouTube page. If you go over to the video section, you'll find a little spot that says live videos and upcoming live videos, and so you can see the exact links for those. I'd like to thank you all so much. If you guys have any questions about the NFCT, leave a comment, send a message, or visit nfct.com for any of your questions. So I'd like to thank you all so much and hope to see you next week and the week after that. Thanks lots. Take care.